You are technically richer than your parents were at your age. That is not an opinion. That is data. Millennials' median net worth at 35 to 39 is higher than baby boomers was at the same age. Adjusted for inflation, the numbers say your generation is doing fine. So why does it feel like you are drowning? Because the numbers are lying to you, not by being wrong, by being irrelevant. Your generation has accumulated wealth. It just accumulated the kind you cannot spend, cannot feel, and cannot use when you actually need it. Economists have a name for it: phantom wealth, and understanding it will permanently change how you read any headline that tells you your generation is going to be okay. This is the Wealth Files. Hit subscribe. Does this feel true to your life? Drop your answer below. The phantom wealth problem starts with housing. The average millennial homeowner has significant equity on paper. In practice, that equity is completely inaccessible because selling means having nowhere to live, and the replacement cost is the same inflated market you just sold into. Your parents bought at 3 to 4 times their annual income. You bought, if you managed to buy at all, at 8 to 12 times yours. Their equity was a buffer. Yours is a trap. The asset appreciates. The mortgage payment remains. The ratio never improves the way it did for the generation that bought before prices disconnected from incomes. And if you're not bought, if you are among the growing majority who rent, then you have no phantom wealth at all. You have the real thing, nothing. The average age of a first-time buyer in the United States hit 40 in 2025. 40. Your parents owned by their late 20s. That is a 15-year gap in equity building that compounds permanently, not a delay. A structural disadvantage that the net worth numbers never fully capture, because they measure what you have, not what you missed. The second layer of phantom wealth is retirement savings. The 401k, the ISA, the superannuation account. These appear on your net worth statement and make the numbers look better than they feel, but they are locked in a legal box that says yours on the label and not yet in the fine print. You cannot access them without penalties until your mid-60s. Your parents' defined benefit pension was a guaranteed income stream that arrived monthly regardless of market performance. Your retirement savings require everything to go right for 30 years. Theirs required them to show up. The third layer is debt. Your net worth subtracts your liabilities from your assets, but it does not capture what carrying those liabilities does to your life. In 2025, millennials surpassed boomers in credit card debt, not because millennials are reckless, but because the gap between income and cost of living became wide enough that debt stopped being a choice and became a structural feature of getting through the month. The net worth calculation subtracts the debt. It does not show you what servicing that debt does to your ability to save, invest, or build anything outside the mandatory boxes. The result is a generation with assets on paper and pressure in practice, technically wealthy by historical comparison, functionally stretched beyond what the numbers reveal. Now consider the Henrys. High earners, not rich yet. A software engineer in San Francisco earning $130,000 per year. After federal and state tax, take-home is approximately $85,000. After rent for a one-bedroom apartment, $3,200 per month. That is $46,600 remaining. After student debt repayment, retirement contributions, health insurance, and transport, approximately $12,000 per year, $1,000 per month in discretionary income. For someone earning more than 95% of their peers, this is not a budgeting problem. This is not an avocado toast problem. This is a structural problem. The engineer played by the rules, studied hard, got the degree, took the high-paying job, moved to where the opportunity was. The system extracted the value of all of that and returned $1,000 a month. The Henrys matter because they closed the last escape route the system offers. When people point at phantom wealth and say, just earn more, the Henrys are the answer. The people who earned more are still locked out. If the ones who did everything right are running in place, the problem is not with the runners. It is with the track. Your parents needed one job to own a home, raise a family, and retire with a pension. You need 3 income streams just to cover rent and minimum debt payments. That is not a coincidence. That is a system that ran out of room to pay people fairly and responded by rebranding the shortfall as opportunity. The gig economy did not emerge because workers suddenly wanted flexibility. It emerged because corporations discovered they could eliminate employee benefits, transfer business risk to individuals, and convince an entire generation that working 60 hours across 4 platforms was entrepreneurship rather than exploitation. Your parents worked 40 hours a week for one employer, who paid their pension, their health insurance, and their sick days. You work 60 hours across 3 apps that classify you as an independent contractor, specifically to avoid paying any of those things. The hustle is not empowerment. It is the language a broken system uses to describe the conditions it created. When a single job no longer pays rent, the system does not fix the job. It celebrates your resilience for getting a second one. It makes a podcast about your side hustle. It calls you a founder. And for those waiting for the inheritance to fix it, the great wealth transfer, here is what that calculation actually looks like. Baby boomers control approximately $82 trillion in wealth. A significant portion is in real estate. You are counting on that house becoming yours. But before it reaches you, it passes through a system designed to extract from it. The average cost of nursing home care in the United States is over $100,000 per year. The average boomer will spend 2 to 3 years in some form of assisted living before death. That is $200,000 to $300,000 extracted from the estate before anything reaches you. In the United Kingdom, social care costs are means tested against assets. The house your parents own will be assessed and partially liquidated to fund their care before probate, and the timing destroys whatever remains. The average age at which millennials will receive an inheritance is 61. The compound interest window has closed. The optimal home buying years have passed. The capital that would have changed your trajectory in your 30s arrives when the trajectory is already set. The money comes when you no longer need it the same way, or it does not come at all because the healthcare system got there first. Waiting for the inheritance is not a financial plan. It is a gamble on timing, on care costs, and on a transfer mechanism that was never designed with your interests at the center. Here is what nobody designing these systems will say out loud. The phantom wealth phenomenon is not a side effect. It is the intended outcome. Housing became illiquid wealth because governments maintained planning restrictions that kept supply low, protecting the asset values of the homeowners who voted for those governments. Retirement savings became loft wealth because corporations lobbied to replace guaranteed pension obligations with defined contribution accounts, eliminating their liability and creating a financial industry that earns fees on your locked-up money for decades. The gig economy created phantom income because corporations classified workers as contractors, generating revenue from their labor while transferring every cost and risk back to the workers. Every mechanism that produces phantom wealth was a policy choice, made by people who benefited from it, ratified by voters who had already passed through the system, and had every incentive to keep it unchanged for those coming after them. Your net worth looks real on a spreadsheet. It evaporates the moment you try to use it to live. The wealth is real, the access is not. And access is the only thing that makes wealth mean anything in a life being lived right now. Not in a retirement account 30 years from now. Not in a house you cannot sell without destroying the life you built around it. Not in an inheritance that arrives when the window has already closed. That gap between what the numbers say and what your life feels like is not a personal failure. It is the gap between the wealth your generation was allowed to accumulate and the wealth your generation was allowed to access. Those are two different things, and the people who built the system knew exactly what they were doing when they made them different. They built a system where every generation after the boomers would appear wealthy enough to silence complaints and feel poor enough to keep working. Wealthy on paper, compliant in practice. That is not an accident. That is a design. If this changed how you see the numbers, the next video goes further. Not just why your wealth feels inaccessible, but why the retirement system is mathematically broken and who decided to let it break. It is called Why You Will Work Until You Die. Watch it next.